Everyone, BC has banned sales of alcohol on New Year's Eve after 8 p.m. This news was reported on December 30th. But this is another poke in the eye to restaurants that are allowed to be open until 10 p.m. Your last tables can't have alcohol with their dinner if they've got a late seating. Like the policies that we're implementing are hurting the people who have to live within these policies. And the people who are implementing them have absolutely no idea what it takes to run a restaurant or run a small business. It's it's astounding, the tone deafness of the policies that we're implementing across the board. Here's Times Square from yesterday. Happy New Year, everyone, right? January 1st, 2021. All of that stuff. Good year ahead and good riddance to 2020. I hope we don't look back on it fondly. I hope a few years from now we're not like, oh man, 2020 was the best of it. I hope not. But the crowds aren't around in New York. The ball will be dropping in Times Square nonetheless. See live footage here. They did the ball drop, but it's empty streets. Empty streets. Is this freedom? The home of the free? Right? It's jaw-dropping, and it's, again, done by our own policies. If you feel safe to come out, and if you don't feel safe to come out, don't come out. It probably will be difficult to maintain social distance here, right? Like, you can't control people like that. Here's Wuhan, China. Yep, Wuhan, China. They got all together, and they've got these balloons, and at midnight they released the balloons. Yay, right? Happy New Year. So, if fighting the virus was measured and the measurement finished in 2020, and this is one place and this is another place, who handled the virus better, right? And is that just government policy? I mean, the government of China can make up that data. I mean, there's another government that reminds me that seems like it's able to do just that, eh? Very, very interesting stuff. But when you can do that and get and allow the public to come out, I mean, I guess the virus doesn't do that much damage to crowds of people wanting to come out and celebrate the new year, right? Like, in order to make sure that doesn't happen, you have to mandate that it's not open to the public. And Times Square was not open to the public, right? Like, watch it on TV. It's virtual this year. Like, we'll go through this pantomime, but it's virtual, right? Like, you've got to just check it out on your TV from your pod. Welcome to that episode of Black Mirror, right? Yeah. Yowza. Anyway, moving into Ontario. Now, Michelle Rempel, she has blocked me and has had me blocked since since 2018, I think, since the provincial election in 2018. But regardless of that, she goes on a 1.5-minute long rant to blame Rod Phillips for going to St. Bart's and daring to travel and getting caught. How dare you, Rod? Because I knew, well, you know what? I'll just let her do it. This is, in the middle, she tries to make it about her. And you can't make policy based on the saddest story. You can't say my excuse is really good, but you people all need to stay in your homes, locked in your homes. Right? To me, it's hypocritical to think that, yes, I've made all of these rules and I agree with all of these rules for COVID management, but my circumstances are special, so I should be exempt from the rules. It seems tone deaf, right? Here we go.
I didn't get to see my family at Christmas. I miss my husband. He's in Oklahoma. But I knew if I went down to Oklahoma, I knew that I would have vulturous CBC reporters reporting on my whereabouts, saying that I was a bad example to the Canadian public. And I knew I couldn't go. I knew that because I knew that if the Alberta government and my constituents were being asked to sit at home, then I had to sit at home. Because as somebody who is elected to serve the people, and I'm going to be straight up with you. I have permission to share this. My mother-in-law has stage 4 breast cancer. I would really like to see her. I haven't seen her in months. We don't know how much time she has left. And I've been thinking like, okay, well, when can I potentially go down and see my family? Could it be during the parliamentary recess? And I was thinking about this, I was going to be upfront with people about when I traveled. But I knew when this news came out yesterday that that took any hope for me off the table. So I'll just be selfish and say thanks, Rod. I don't get to see my mother-in-law now because there'll be a witch hunt if I go see my family. Even though I'm going to see my mother-in-law, and I'm not going to St. Bart's. So yes, a little angry about that, but
it's very interesting that she goes on a long emotional roller coaster. My mother-in-law, I don't get to see my family. And then she's like, thanks, Rod. I'm not going to St. Bart's. I'm just going to see my mother-in-law. Like, it's a really kind of weird reversal, right? Like, it's kind of like, wait, what? It's very, very odd. And it's not like Rod Phillips was resigned. So she's like responding to the resignation. And like, oh, not like I got a trip to St. Bart's out of it. Now I don't even get to go, right? Here's another one. Tracy Allard, UCP, owes Albertans an apology and a resignation. Alberta Municipal Affairs Minister took a Hawaii vacation. Here it is. Alberta Minister of Affairs took a Hawaii vacation, sources say. CBC News has learned that Alberta Municipal Affairs, Minister Tracy Allard spent time in Hawaii this month on a family vacation, despite direction from both the federal and provincial governments to avoid non-essential travel during the COVID-19 pandemic. Allard's press secretary, Justin Marshall, did not respond to repeated requests for clarification on whether she had been out of the country this month. Marshall would only say that the minister is now home in Grand Prairie, quote, mostly relaxing, but with some work too. CBC News has confirmed with sources that the United Conservative Party MLA, who was appointed to the senior cabinet position in August, was in Hawaii this month on a family vacation. Sources indicate she returned home on Wednesday. CBC News has not confirmed the exact dates of the trip or where in Hawaii Allard was staying. It's interesting because Phillips has set the standard for resigning, but before that, Patty Haydu did this with impunity, like traveled back and forth to Thunder Bay and didn't even really respond. No, I'm not going to answer that question because liberals don't answer questions they don't like, right? Like if they don't like that question, that's a racist question to ask. Next question. Moving on. We're scrolling down a little bit. Calgary political commentator and pollster Janet Brown said the stakes are very high in the current political climate following the resignation of Ontario Finance Minister Rod Phillips after he took a Caribbean vacation while the province was under strict lockdown measures and discouraging non-essential travel, and he wrecked Michelle Rempole's chances of visiting her family or having a trip to St. Bart's. Maybe she could meet her family in St. Bart's. People were asked to make some very tough decisions this holiday season, Brown said. Should I go on my trip to Hawaii or should I not? Should I go on my trip to Hawaii or should I not? Very difficult decisions, yes. Most Albertans rose to the challenge and made the tough decisions, so it's very hard for them to watch people of privilege doing the things they opted not to do things that were not even in their capacity to do. Brown described Allard's decision to leave the country as a poor choice. I think all ministers should have stayed home, she said. It was the right thing to do from a public health point of view, and it was the right thing to do from a political point of view as well. Brown said every elected official needs to consider the optics of vacationing during the pandemic. The government's website said quite clearly to avoid non-essential travel. She said it doesn't really matter what position you hold in the government. These were decisions that are not going to be looked upon fondly by constituents, no matter what your position is. Right, and I think the other part of this that I think is kind of funny is the fact that Michelle Rempole's wanting to go to Oklahoma. I can't go to Newfoundland. Like, Newfoundland is out of the question for me. I am not allowed to go to Newfoundland without a 2-week-long quarantine. And then, I mean, who's got time to do a 2-week-long quarantine and then a vacation and then to fly home, a month? Like, this seems crazy. Michelle Rempole's worried about being hounded by those evil CBC hound dogs, right? Those vulturists, is that what she used? CBC article writers, right? How dare they follow her travel plans? Here's Tracy Allard, and I think it's a lot more about being disingenuous. And she says, I'm looking ahead to a brighter days in 2021. This has been a challenging year and certainly one for the record books. Throughout the challenges in 2020, our resiliency, our generosity, and our capacity to give back have shone through. And this is an approximation of where she was when she was writing that tweet. Not in Canada, right? This is a beach on Hawaii, right? Look at all those people. Maybe one of those people is Tracy Allard. It's probably not true. But it's on December 24th that she's writing this tweet, and she was in Hawaii at some point. So maybe she was in Canada when she wrote this tweet. Who knows? But who knows is the point, and she's not being forthcoming about it, right? She's doing the same kind of misinformation that Rod Phillips engaged in, which is to misrepresent what's actually happening, right? Like, you're asking people to stay locked in their homes while at the same time going on a trip to Hawaii, complaining about not being able to go to Oklahoma, but people can't travel freely between provinces in the Atlantic bubble, right? Like you can't really travel freely within Canada. There were points where Quebec was blocking roads into Quebec from Ontario, et cetera. Like we've fallen a long way from basic constitutional rights, and now Michelle Rempel has the gall to say thanks Rod Phillips for wrecking my chances at going to visit my mother-in-law and or having a vacation in St. Bart's. Right? Like it just seems tone deaf. Here's 222 minutes. He says, I know it's different because she's a liberal, but imagine if you gave Patty Haydu this much press when she did the same thing multiple times with the government's private jet, right? Rosemary Barton talking about how this is another update on Rod Phillips, right? St. Bart's requires a negative COVID-19 test, so he purchased the test to travel. How dare he? The story just never ends. Where's Justin again? What's he doing? Which vacation spot is he in? Is it Barbados? Yeah, isn't that convenient? I don't know where Justin is, but I've heard that he's Ezra Levent has a bounty on anybody who's got a picture of John Tory or Justin Trudeau out of the country, because they're asking people to stay home. Here is a hospital in London, and we're watching this just because. Turn off the volume here. We're just having a quick look here because they're saying that the hospitals are overcrowded, right? But everybody who's going in here is saying, well, they're not overcrowded. Now, the idea is there's a nurse who is arguing on Twitter saying that what's happening is the COVID restrictions are having short staffing issues causing this. So usually the pink is the beds, but because of short staffing issues, this is the yellow is the beds for 2020, I believe. 2020 yellow is the beds. So excuse me. So when you look at that and when you see that the impact in the number of beds because of the staffing issues, et cetera, this goes back to self-imposed, like we're doing this based on these flawed tests. People know the tests are flawed, but yet we continue to double down. We still don't know, don't know. Asymptomatic spread is a big question mark, but I don't know of anywhere that's actually trying to get to the bottom of that question mark, despite everywhere having a lot of healthy positive tests, so asymptomatic positive tests. And we don't know how many asymptomatic positive tests per day. If we had 60 positive tests and 5 people were sick and 55 people were healthy but positive, we'd have a lot of people to potentially screen to see if they're also sick. If they're sick, then maybe this can be spread. But they'd also have to be sick with COVID-19, right? If they're not, then we've got viable evidence that this doesn't spread asymptomatically. Regardless, why aren't we doing this? But the hospital capacity issues, these are not new, right? This is a long thread about the seasonality of influenza and coronaviruses and how they impact Toronto and everywhere hospitals' capacity. But this is number 17. It says, even the media has started to question the claims of hospitals at capacity. The data doesn't support the claim that our hospitals are bursting. And there's all sorts of articles talking about the declaration of emergency, not declaration of emergency, the declaration of the lockdowns, etc. The data doesn't back it up. Right? The data is just not backing it up. And I've been talking about this for a long time, so I'm not going to go deep into what they're talking about here, but the hospitals aren't all that busy. If they've got, this is Humber River Hospital, and this was published on December 23rd. And I mean, if you've got time to choreograph all of this, if you've got time to organize all of these very expensive people, maybe they should be busy. Like during a usual flu season, if there's a medium bad flu season, you don't see dancing nurses, right? Even when they get the flu vaccine, they're not like, yeah, we got the flu vaccine, we're ready to go. Nobody's like, we got the clinic ready, we're going to dance for you. That didn't happen before. That wasn't part of the job. Like the job was to keep people healthy or offer people the services that you're providing, whether it's to draw their blood or whatever it is, do their tests, do their screening, do whatever. I've heard some horrific things about what's going on. People's surgeries or people's screenings being kicked down the road. They can't work because they're waiting for the screening. They can't get the screening because they're clearing the beds for COVID, but the COVID patients aren't coming. In Guelph, we've still got 4 people in the hospital for COVID. That's it, 4. 76% capacity, I think, right now. 77, 76%. Green, all across the board. There's no reason to be in a lockdown, yet we're in a lockdown. We're destroying our businesses. Nurses are dancing. What's going on? Why are we doing this to ourselves? Self-imposed destruction. Here's another dancing nurse. Yeah, and my point is just kind of the hallway, but it's a short clip, 2 seconds, right? Maybe there's lots of people and we just caught 2 seconds of a dancing nurse who's in an empty hallway in a hospital. But why is it so empty? Why are they laying off 97 registered nurses? This is in September. Why are they doing that in the middle of a pandemic? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? All hands on deck. We'll do whatever we can. When people get sick, we lose beds because the people are sick and they can't work. So we're going to lay people off because, there's a financial challenge. $63 billion industry? $63 billion this year, I believe? I just don't get it. Here's from April 29th, last updated May 1st. The first lockdown in Ontario, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, was instituted on March 17th. I remember St. Patrick's Day, right? I thought, man, bars are going to be angry. I thought they're going to be real angry. I just didn't realize that they wouldn't be around long enough to be angry, or for that anger to matter at all, right? Like, I guess Doug Ford knew, right? He just didn't care because they weren't going to be around long enough. The bars might be angry and then they're going to be gone, right? And then picked up by multinational conglomerates. Oh, it's what used to be your corner pub will be Taco Bell, a la Demolition Man, right? All of our rooms are empty. Hospital ER vacant during pandemic. This is CTV news from, and I already said it, but May 1st. Yeah, people are avoiding the ER. People are missing on screenings. There are impacts of this. Here's somebody saying our hospitals here in Renfrew County on December 29th are empty. Here's a video of Simcoe County on December 20th. I'm going to mute it, but she's there in the afternoon for and she shows the clock. She's there in the afternoon for a screening of her own and I can't remember what she says, but she goes around and she says, there's nobody here. Like this is the public entrance to the hospital. There's nobody here. So in what way are the hospitals overwhelmed exactly, specifically? Because the nurses can't dance? Here's hospitals struggling to keep up. This is from November 17th, 2018. They're saying the complex nature and the elderly population and the complex nature of their needs is making it difficult for the hospitals to keep up. The images of the hospitals here, they're busy. Like there's people in them. It's very interesting, right? I'm not going to play it right now. Here's a doctor, and I thought this was very interesting. Did someone die with COVID-19 or of COVID-19, or did it have absolutely nothing to do whatsoever to do with COVID-19? Who knows? I certainly don't, and I wrote some of the death certificates. So this guy is a doctor, Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, and this is published on December 30th. He says, what is left to say? I'm just going to read a little bit. If you've never read Dante's Inferno, well, this is a little bit dry to get into, but I'll jump over it, and I think this is worth reading. So I'll leave the link in the description. It's the drmalcolmmckendrick.org link. So sorry that I don't do the descriptions anymore. It takes a lot of time, and I just don't have the time to do it anymore. I apologize. I used to hand copy each link. I used to do each like one, and I got a plugin to duplicate that. Anyway, regardless, back to this. It cut out a lot of time, and I can't afford the half hour it takes to do that. So I apologize. Anyway, back to this. I find the description of that desperate pursuit of an elusive, wavering banner in Dante's Inferno rings rather true. This, it seems, is pretty much the place where we have arrived. Which banner have you decided to follow? The COVID-19 is the most terrible infection ever, and we must do everything in our power to stop it, whatever the cost banner? Or the what on earth are we doing? This is no worse than a bad flu, and we're destroying the world economy, stripping away basic human rights, and killing more people than we are saving banner. There may be others. Between these two main, completely incompatible positions lies the truth. It is in pretty poor shape. It has been crushed and bent out of shape and smashed and left as a broken heap in the corner. I search where I can to find the fragments in an attempt to bring together a picture that makes some kind of sense. But what to believe? Who to believe? Yes, I feel a deep kinship with this person. Back to this. I've stripped away the accuracy of the PCR COVID-19 testing. I found myself left with nothing I could make any sense of. I hacked down to establish the way that COVID-19 deaths are recorded. All I found were assumptions and difficulties. Did someone die with COVID-19, of COVID-19, or did it have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with COVID-19? Who knows? I certainly don't, and I wrote some of the death certificates myself. Have we overestimated deaths or underestimated deaths? I don't know, and so it goes on. So what do I know? I know that COVID-19 exists, or I am as certain of this as I can be. Was it a natural mutation from a bat, or was it created in a laboratory? Well, I suppose it doesn't really matter. It's here, and there's no chance that any government anywhere would ever admit responsibility for creating the damn thing. So we will never we will never know. If you asked me to bet, I would say it was created in a lab, then escaped by accident. Is it deadlier than influenza? Well, it is certainly deadlier than some strains of influenza, indeed most strains. However, Spanish flu was estimated to have killed 50 million when the world's population was about a fifth of what it is now. So COVID-19 is definitely less deadly than that one. About as deadly as the influenza of 1957 and 1967, probably. Will it mutate into something worse? Who knows? Will the current vaccine work on mutated strains? Who knows? Can it be transmitted by asymptomatic carriers? Who knows? How effective are the current vaccines going to be? Who knows? What are we left with? At the beginning, I kept relatively quiet on how deadly COVID-19 would prove to be because I didn't know. The figures raged up and down. The infections fatality rate became a battle scene with warriors lined up on either side to defend their positions. I even got attacked by fact checkers, the self-appointed know-it-alls who are, it seems, capable of judging on all matters of scientific dispute. Truly, the gods have descended to live among us. Those who can determine what is true and what is not. No need for any further clinical trials or any more scientific studies of any sort ever. We just need to ask the fact checkers for the answers to any given question. I fear, just as a quick aside, that if Joe Biden gets in, that's all we'll be able to do. Ask their fact checkers to see what the truth is. And anything that is in dispute of their truth will get silenced quickly and efficiently with the help of Twitter and Facebook and the rest. Back to this. We're almost there now. Anyway, back to this. Anyway, it appears that tens of thousands died in some countries, among almost none in others. What I was waiting to see was the impact on one outcome that you cannot alter or fudge, the outcome that is overall mortality, i.e. the chances of dying of anything. I did this because when it comes to recording deaths from a specific illness, things can go in and out of fashion. A couple of years ago, I looked at deaths from sepsis. At one time, this was a condition of far lower priority. Doctors didn't routinely search for it or routinely record it on death certificates. Then all of a sudden there was a gigantic push to look for it more diligently, diagnose it more, treat it better. I think this was generally a good thing. Sepsis is imminently treatable if you think to look for it, and lives can be saved. We now have initiatives like Sepsis 6 warnings that pop up on computers. Have you considered sepsis and such like? I love it. Not. Because I do not love being told how to think and do my job, but by a computer algorithm programmed with zero risk as their touchstone. But hey ho. In 2013, in the UK, a report was published in the Health Ombudsman Time to Act, Severe Sepsis Rapid Diagnosis and Treatment Saves Lives, as the report stated. Sepsis is a more common reason for hospital admission than heart attack and has higher mortality, the UK Sepsis Trust. The last statement is somewhat disingenuous as many people with sepsis are very elderly, often with multiple morbidities and such like. They were probably going to die shortly from something else. Anyway, with all this activity, with all this increased sepsis recognition and treatment, you would expect the rate of deaths from sepsis to fall. It did not. The rate has gone up by around 30% since 2013. Does this mean that there's far more sepsis going about, or that it is just more often written on death certificates? I suggest the latter. I use this example simply to make it clear that even the cause of death written on a death certificate is far from rock solid evidence. With COVID-19, this is a massive problem. In the UK and several other countries, if you have had a COVID-19 positive test, which may or may not be accurate, and you die within 28 days of that positive test, you will be recorded as a COVID-19 death. I do not know much for sure about COVID-19, but I do know that this is just complete nonsense. There are also many cases where even if COVID-19 test was accurate, COVID-19 would have nothing whatsoever to do with the death. Another thing known, or at least we probably know, is that the vast majority of people who die had many other things wrong with them. So yeah, and this is a very long article. So that was just, I thought it was a very long article. It's not, I guess. There's a lot of comments. Haha, my bad. Anyway, I thought that was the most important part. And it's very interesting what's happening to our ability to reason things out. Because as I said, as he said, whose truth do you believe, right? Is it that COVID-19 is the most terrible infection and we must do everything to stamp it out in our power? Or what on earth are we doing? This is no worse than a bad flu, and we're destroying the entire world and our culture in order to stamp out something that is normal and natural. It doesn't make any kind of sense. I'm certainly in the latter group. And it doesn't make any sense what we're doing. It doesn't make any sense what we're doing. Similar to this. Ottawa Citizens reporting, Canada now resettles more refugees than any other country, mostly through private sponsorship. The idea, I said in my tweet that having people here taken care of, and I mean economically taken care of, well taken care of, making sure that their money can buy the things that they need to survive on a weekly, daily basis. And that's not true. Our small businesses are being decimated. Bringing people in to help them set up in Canada in this kind of situation is irresponsible. And I think it's just unbelievably irresponsible, awfully irresponsible. And having the positive spin on it, like the press tries to continually push, we're helping people. There's 200 million stateless people in the world ready to say, yeah, Canada's my home, let's go. And we're only a population of 38,000. And it wasn't long ago we were 38 million. And it wasn't long ago we were 35 million. But all of that said, we're a large country with a long history and a proud history. And diluting 38 million with 200 million does not do anything to maintain that history. We need to have a balance. If we want to have immigration as part of our makeup, we also have to be replacing our population. We should be having incentives in the government, just like Poland does, just like Hungary, I think, does now, that encourage people to have families and children. The reason that a birth rate reduces to below 2 is not because people don't want to have children. It's because people aren't secure enough to have children. It's because it's difficult to buy a house by yourself. It's difficult to get secure by yourself. If you can't support a family on the money that you make, if you have to have 2 people working all the time, then there's never a good time to have a baby, right? But if you have economic freedom, if you own a house and you're making enough money to cover that house and more money and enough money to cover somebody maybe staying at home, then typically what happens is the birth rate goes up. So it's again, we're doing this to ourselves. We're doing it on purpose. We're doing it with policy. We're cutting off our leg for a sprained ankle. Here's more examples. Toronto plans further restrictions on business as city braces for COVID-19 surge. It's always 2 weeks away. We're a week into a lockdown and the numbers are higher than ever in Toronto. Toronto is almost 36 days into a lockdown and the numbers are higher than ever. What's going on? What's going on is the interventions aren't working. And they're saying it's your fault, citizen. It's your fault that the interventions aren't working. How dare you? How dare you not follow the health advice and that you're causing these outbreaks? Where are all the tests? How many people are sick? Why can't you tell us how many people are sick every day? How many people have symptoms of the 3,000 new positive cases? Okay, I don't know how you could further restrict the businesses anymore, right? Like, well, you could tell the big box stores that they can only sell essential goods and then make the list of essential goods completely asinine. But I mean, hey, welcome to communist Canada, right? They don't give any idea of what the further restrictions might be. They just kind of allude to it. Anyway, she said, Dr. Eileen Davila, the city's chief medical officer of health, said on Wednesday that Toronto will announce new restrictions on businesses early next week in an effort to slow the spread of novel coronavirus. These steps by Toronto Public Health are meant to create as much distance and safety as possible while respecting many people need to work, said Davila, adding that businesses also need to stay open to provide the goods and services everyone needs. The new restrictions come after Toronto reported a record 1,069 new cases on Wednesday, up from 957 cases it reported on Tuesday. Davila said that those back-to-back highs likely don't reflect a spike public health officials are expecting following Christmas. That wave will start to be seen within the next 2 to 5 days. Yeah, I totally believe them. Garbage. So yeah, it's blaming you guys, right? Here's the BC fish farms. I've been talking about this a little bit. This is a long thread talking about the damage and the monetary damage, et cetera, that this is doing potentially to the industry being shut down. Again, we're doing this to ourselves with bad policy, right? This is complying, I think, with a UN initiative, I believe. But anyway, 2 weeks ago, the federal government decided to close fish farms in BC's Discovery Islands. Regardless of my position on open net salmon farming, I think this policy rollout is terrible, not debating the science, but the policy rollout. Resource management is mostly about managing people, not resources. To do this, the government builds trust with communities. N. Hott wrote a great thesis on trust with Indigenous communities. I would argue a similar framework applies to non-Indigenous communities. I've talked about, this is why I highlighted this tweet thread. I've talked about this before. When the government, like Doug Ford, comes out with a framework like the Opening Ontario framework and then tosses it out the window, he's breaking trust with the community. The framework was an initial trust with the businesses. This is how we're going to work with things. You'll be able to see, it'll be transparent. But really, one, the framework came in because the businesses who were being closed demanded the data to back up the fact that they needed to close, and the government couldn't provide it, so they just came up with the framework. And two, I think that they don't care about the breaking the trust with the businesses, because what I said earlier, they knew that the businesses wouldn't be around for long anyway. They're just going to be moved over to the UBI. Maybe. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. I really, really do. Back to this. To build and maintain this trust, any resource decision that eliminates jobs, even a necessary decision, must look after affected workers and involve local governments. From my outsider view, neither of those occurred. First Nations were consulted for this decision, as they should be. Aquaculture directly employs 1,500 people in BC. Not sure how many will directly lose their jobs with the closure of these 19 farms, not to mention more closures by 2025. Might be able to provide, these people might be able to provide the numbers, but it only takes 270 jobs for Port McNeill and Port Hardy to lose 10% of its employment. The combined population of Port Hardy and Port McNeill is 5,500 with an employed labor force of 2,785. The feds offer no insight into what support will be offered to affected workers. So where are they going to go? What are they going to do? It's similar to people being wound down, people who relied on restaurants, waitresses, etc. Waitressing is a great job, makes a lot of money, good tips. And if you're good at it, you get great tips, right? And it's a really good way to make a living. And if restaurants are closed, if people can't go, if people are being pushed away from going to restaurants, you can't run your family on what you can't even expect the regular tips that you used to get. You can't have any kind of surety that you're going to be not even employed, but able to make the kind of money you were making before, even if you are employed, right? Like you may not lose your job in the strictest sense, but you may not have the ability to earn what you were earning before. What do you do in that situation? What happens when the EI runs out? What happens when the EI runs out while you're waiting for surgery? What happens? What happens is you fall through the cracks, right? Here's food lines. Soviet-style lineup, says Ezra Levent, to buy food. Who benefits? You all know the answer. When Amazon gets into the grocery delivery business, maybe those dancing robots will deliver the groceries until someone decides to strap a gun on, right? And somebody told me that they're all automated with 5G. Terrifying. Get your Sawzall ready, guys. Like with a battery pack to saw through the 5G towers. Take the robots out at their brain level, right? My goodness. Anyone planning a Terminator counter offensive? No? Not yet? Okay. Let me know when that happens. Dr. Kaur says a federal appeals court again struck down New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's strict capacity limits on religious services in areas with high rates of COVID, ruling that the restrictions discriminate against religious rights, bolstered the Supreme Court injunction. So in Canada, we're still suffering under the ability for health officials to shut down religious rights in contravention of our basic rights, and people have said, oh no, it's in the public interest. Like the health officials are doing it because they have to do it because of COVID. It's very, very dangerous. That's not borne out in the data. It's not borne out in the data. As many people have pointed out, the numbers do not justify the death numbers, the all-cause mortality numbers don't justify this. Don't justify this at all. City and Toronto police vowing crackdown on illegal hockey and tobogganing. So they've got barriers up at ice rinks. They don't want tobogganing on ski hills and snowboarding hills due to liability. I don't know. When you take everything away from people, this is bad press, right? And bad optics, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why I want to be clear. I don't think they're chasing kids off regular hills. They're chasing kids off ski hills and snowboarding hills. But you know what would fix that problem? Allowing the ski and snowboard hill operators to operate, because being outside, you don't need to wear masks generally. Being outside, unless food lines are okay, skiing's not okay. I don't know. I think you can find a way around a chalet, right? Like they can put skis on outside. These are solvable problems that the one-trick pony of you're shut down doesn't actually solve any problems, okay? And it's very, very frustrating. This reminds me of a Jon Stewart spit take. I almost went and got a cup of water to do a spit take on this one. I should have, but I'm not going to. But here it is. National Post. Burning questions. Will Canadians spend their mountains of saved cash to rescue the economy? Yep. Are you going to spend your mountains of saved cash to rescue the Canadian economy that, we're just going to send money overseas anyway. We're just going to send, it's only a couple $2 billion, and it's for educating gender studies in Pakistan. So what's your problem? Bigot? Right? Spend your mountains of cash to rescue us from the Liberals' drunken spending spree. Where is Justin Trudeau? Indeed. Indeed, where is he? I don't know. I thought this was just tone deaf. Like what ridiculousness? What ridiculousness? This is the recovery that Ms. Freeland is banking her financial ministry on. Ha! Lucky us, right? Lucky us. Mountains of saved cash. Can you save Canada? Just spend money at one of the 3 stores you're allowed to spend money at. And no spending on vacations. No. And you can't go anywhere. So, make it domestic spent. And, oh, right, by the way, we can't get any building materials because the supply chain's completely effed. So, if you're going to do renovations, make sure they're temporary. What are you going to do, right? What are you going to do? Ooh, that guy's scary. Okay, that's enough out of me. All of it seems calculated. All of it seems like they couldn't possibly be doing this by accident, right? And Michelle Rempel's little acting thing here at the beginning, if you don't like the rules, don't establish the rules that way, right? Like if you want to visit your family in Oklahoma, I mean, nobody's forcing you to stay here. Tough decisions are made every day. Go visit your mother-in-law if it's that important to you. Go to St. Bart's if it's that important to you. But crying on there and blaming Rod Phillips for his bad choice, so now you can't go. I mean, you're different. He's different. Different people, right? Ask your constituents. Maybe they'll let you go, Michelle. Jeepers creepers. Okay, that's enough out of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingWasely.co. And welcome to 2021. A brand new year. Maybe it'll be better this year. Maybe people will start questioning why the heck we're in lockdown. Maybe people will say, this is too far. I don't believe you. This is not believable. The data that we can see doesn't back up these actions. Maybe people will start articulating that to the leadership. Maybe they will. Fingers crossed. Here's hoping for a good 2021. Here's hoping for a return to the light. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll be around for 2021 until they make me illegal, right? I'm not going to change what I'm doing, but I think they're going to try and make what I do illegal. So I'll keep doing this while it's legal for me to do so. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.